Bob knows so many people, it's crazy.
He does.
And they all just love him, you know. So Bob had a one-man show, you know. Well, him and some guys that helped him and some subcontractors, but he put his personal touch on every single job, and it's his attention to detail, and that's why those people remain so loyal to him. And that's why people waited 2 years when we met to get his roof. He's like, oh, they'll wait forever on me, you know. I just got to get them done now, because they're kind of starting to get upset, you know. But I've talked them down, so we probably got another 6 months or a year, but, you know, I'm like, no, we can get them done quick. So when he dropped the box down, I don't know, he probably had 40 roofs, and they were all roofs he did before, and he had all the diagrams from before and all the orders of material, so it was super easy. But because of the loyalty and the service he gave them, the people left, you know. And when I first started, it was all me and service and be there and promptness and, you know, just work ethic and do what you say you're gonna do. But now when you get other guys that work for you or people, you've got to make sure they understand how important that is, you know. So it's like ingraining it.
About 1969, back in those days, you'd use a gauge to make sure that you got the shingles the right exposure and keep them straight. Theoretically, if you get your first line of shingles straight or shakes, you can use this and keep it straight the whole way up. So it's old-fashioned. You see it's cut off because we didn't, it was usually about that long. So we cut them off so we wouldn't have all that extra weight down there. So anyway, that's why I have these strong muscles in my right hand. I grew up a cowboy. My dad was in the building supply and lumber business, and he always liked horses. So the first lumber yard he ever had, he built a little barn down there and a corral on the creek down behind the lumber yard. He kept a couple of horses down there. When I moved to Jackson, people ask, how'd you get to Jackson? I said, I'm gonna give you the short version. God sent me. That's the only one that makes any sense. Once an Aggie, always an Aggie.
Exactly. So what's the story behind that? Do you have family that went there, or?
No, I'm the first one to go to college anywhere. Oh. But
it's supposed to be another
all through high school, we had horses and cattle, and I worked for 2 veterinarians.
Yeah, well, I've had 6
my last 3 years of high school. They went to A&M, so they told me that I needed to go to A&M and be a veterinarian. So that's what I did. And I did pretty good until the second year, and they introduced something, I think it's organic chemistry. That's what it was. Organic chemistry.
Right to left on the roof.
And that ended my career as a veterinarian.
Organic chemistry did?
Organic chemistry did me in. Not all by itself, but that was a good thing. So then, my dad still owned the lumber yard and was in the construction business, so I switched over to building products marketing. So I eventually got out of Texas A&M, and my one son, Joel, went to Texas A&M and was in the Army for 10 years. And then his 2 sons graduated from A&M. And just last year, his twin daughters graduated from Texas A&M. So you might say we're an Aggie family for sure. But the neat thing is, I moved to Mississippi and I married into an Ole Miss family. So you'll see on the back of my SUV, on one side there's Texas A&M, on the other side it says Ole Miss. So I've got the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really neat.
You never told me how you got the nickname Overkill. Was that a self-indoctrinated thing, or?
Well, kinda. When I was a little boy, my daddy was a carpenter. And he always told me, he said, son, if 2 nails are good, 6 nails is better.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I always said that's our philosophy, putting on a roof. If we can figure out a way to do it better. So I don't remember how I came up with overkill, maybe. But anyway, that's what overkill means. Do it better.
If 2's good, 6 is better. That's
there you go.
In most cases.
Well, yeah. Depends on who's pushing it. Yeah.
I always liked, before I met him, was the legend of Bob Drummond. You know, like I would hear, like, oh, Bob Drummond, yeah, specialty roofing. Oh, he charges a ton. And I was like, who is this masked man, you know? So, and then I would run across your business card every once in a while, and I'm like, overkill. I'm like, what in the heck, overkill? Like, why, you know, what does that mean or whatever? And then I read one of your estimates. I was like, overkill, that explains it. And then, you know, like the ice and water shield and the platted 30-pound felt in the valleys, and I was just like, wow, that's a lot, but it's overkill. But you guaranteed your work and people loved it. So did you ever think, Bob, I know, you know, when we first started, we were measuring these roofs by hand, you know, and all going through your filing cabinet, that's a gem, all these hand sketches, you know, and I was more just a, you know, because I'd be up there sketching it. You had Wesley, and he'd bring it back, and you'd make these ornate sketches. And over the years, and then it's like, wow, we can snap a satellite photo and get these things. And then it went to the drone. So I got into drone, so I'd snap a shot with the drone, and I'd scale my drawing and be able to do it quicker. And now we've got 8 pictures around the house, and it 3D models the entire house and measures the window openings, everything, you know. It's crazy, the technology and how far it's evolved.
I don't even have to use my mechanical drawing skills anymore. We had the little strippers.
Yeah, where you grab your 4 or 5 nails.
Yeah.
But
we thought that was high tech.
Oh yeah, yeah, a little nail loader into your fingers.
Right.
And
I want to hear the whole you and Joe story.
Okay.
So, like, how'd you meet Joe? How'd you kind of get involved, and how'd you decide that he was the right person to come in business with?
Well, Joe and I first met on a roofing job. They had a leak along the wall there, and it was a brick wall. They asked us to come in and flash it after they'd already roofed over. They'd bricked over the roofing, which is totally wrong. So when we got back involved after roofing the house and being gone, we saw the problem. So I just told Wesley and his guys, just tear it all out and we'll reflash it, put new shingles along there. And so we're out there working on this thing, and so Cherry shows up with this bright-eyed young guy, and it was Joe Boyd. But anyway, that's where Joe and I met. It was probably 2 or 3 years before we ever really met.
Yeah.
And we were out at Annandale doing the cottages, they call them. And there's, I think, 6 houses and then a pool house. They all have wood shingles. I had roofed one cottage. It had 2 owners. So I'd roofed it several years before. And I'd roofed the Dr. Tyler's house and the pool house. Well, a hailstorm came through and everything. So Joe went out there. And I had a contract on 2 of the buildings, I think. And Joe had a contract on 3 of them. And we just met out there and started talking. So we decided to do it together. There was one big house that neither one of us were doing, but I had bid it, giving the guy a price before Joe got out there. So then when we got together, he was going to go price this other guy's house, and I said, well, I've already got a file on that if you want to see it. So he took my numbers, which turned out to be a little bit more than his numbers would have been.
Gotcha.
And so together we wound up doing that house. From there, it just kind of took off, you know, and I just kept pulling these files out, and people kept calling me just like they do today. But Joe's attitude has been all along, if it's humanly possible, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And we never have had any disagreement really about anything. But it's always, let's just get it fixed, make people happy, and go on.
Let's talk about why you like working with Joe. Like, what kind of drew you to wanting to get in business with him?
That was the next point. Thank you for reminding me.
Yep.
That happens a lot.
Hey, I always forget stuff.
Well, the thoughts blow through so fast, you just hope they'll blow back. I had talked to some people about these customers. A lot of them were personal friends, and you know, I've never spent any money on advertising, except a company signed on the church golf tournament, like we did this year.
Yeah, and I mean, that's because, I mean, word of mouth, especially in this business that we're in, I mean, people, I mean, they can go online and see our reviews and stuff and see what other people say, but I mean, if you ask your neighbor who you trust, they're going to go with that rather than someone who spends thousands and thousands a month on advertising type of stuff.
Right. I talked to a couple of guys, and I thought I had one figured out that would be a good one I could work with. I figured I couldn't trust them. Okay. So I was still looking for somebody, and so when Joe and I bumped into each other out there, and we got talking, and then in the course of doing these jobs, I got to know more about him, and he got to know more about me, and we both prayed about it, and I figured he's the one. Thank you, Lord. And that's where we went from there.
Yeah.
Have you seen our contract?
I have not, but I heard it's on a little piece of paper. Yeah.
Well, I wrote it up. And this is a neat part of the story. I wrote it up, and basically it says we're going to do business together, and Joe's not taking on any of my obligations or anything. He's not responsible for anything that I've done in the past. We want to make that clear. He's going to treat my customers nice and so forth, take care of them. But if we have any serious disagreement or problem, we agreed to take it to our pastors in our church and get them to help us work it out.
Yeah.
Had a place to sign. Well, it just so happens that Tanya's husband, Frank, had come by to pick up Tanya and take her to lunch. So Joe called him in to see the contract, you know. Yeah. And so we signed it, you know, and how neat, and Joe says, how neat was that for my preacher to come in and to see that? Of course, Frank, he loved it, you know. Yeah. So, but that's our agreement. And that's all the legality involved. These 7 file cabinets represent 30 years of my being in the roofing business, with a lot of emphasis on my early days where I learned how to be in the roofing business. But anyway, all my sweet customers that we've done work with in the past are in these files. And there are a bunch of them here. And this is just one example. This happens to be when we started, he was a young architect. He's a lot older now. But anyway, it has all the information and the files and the drawings that we did through the years. I mean, to get ready for it. We would go out and look at a house and assess the damage, if any, or whatever. Each one of them, we'd go out there and measure it and take pictures. Then I'd come back and do a drawing of the roof, and then we'd figure it up and so forth, get with them, and deal with the insurance company if that was appropriate. Anyway, then I tried to make these things so that my contract was 1 page long, an 11-inch page, so that all the instructions, and I could show the customer what we were doing, and then I could take the numbers off and give that same contract to my crew, and they could use that as guidelines on what to do. And we did these things, just kept on adding up. But all these things, they're just about always full. But always did not put anything in the bottom drawers because it's hard to see. And the older you get, the less you want to get down that far anyway. I've always thought this was pretty valuable. And there's some very nice people in these files. And I've enjoyed all it took to make these files possible. And the good Lord just put me in the right place at the right time. It's been good. And these are my files, and I hope they do somebody else a lot of good.
Well, Bob, it's been real today, man.
It has. It's really been fun.
I've had a good time. We're going to do it some more. We'll call it Bob and Joe's Field Trip Day.
There you go.